So, like that hypothetical, like energy reporter, they're doing all their duties of their job, they're writing the articles and stuff like that. But then they want to like turn on their phone camera and just kind of speak on the topic in their beat and upload it to their own personal account. Like, how comfortable would you be with that?
Yeah, comfortable. I mean, that's something we encourage, and we get a lot of support from our social team on that. So there's definitely tie-in for like, here's form and style, and here's graphics that we want to use. Like, there's definitely support there. But yeah, it
But if they
definitely
just want to do it on their personal account, though, okay,
yeah,
they'll
yeah,
even support
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think creating a brand account for an individual person is like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I know there are people in media in the past who have thought, well, we're supporting this account, so we should own it. That's so silly to me. It's who's very short-sighted, because like we should build up someone, who's authentically their own account. They're putting a lot of work to grow it, so like why should we take that from them? And then also like people don't want to follow just like a secondary branded account.
Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. Straight Arrow News was founded around a simple idea. A lot of Americans feel like they're living in completely different realities depending on where they get their news. The company grew out of conversations between founder Joe Ricketts and media executive Jonathan Harding, who come from different political viewpoints, but realized they were often consuming very different versions of the same stories. Their goal was to build a digital news outlet focused on politically unbiased reporting and a clearer separation between news and opinion. Over the past year, that mission has increasingly been shaped by Chief Content Officer Derek Mead, the former vice editor who helped oversee that company's international expansion and also ran its U.S. newsroom. In a recent interview, Mead explained why the company is moving away from high-volume aggregation and investing more heavily in original journalism, how it's using video and social distribution to reach audiences fatigued by partisan news, and why he believes there's still room for a new national media brand built around trust instead of outrage. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, gently tap on that subscribe button so you can see more interviews with the world's most successful media entrepreneurs. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey, Derek, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Simon, thank you for having me.
So super excited to talk to you. To talk to you. You are the chief content officer, I believe, at a news organization called Straight Arrow News. So I'm really excited to get into understanding its model, what it's aiming to do differently, and kind of the ambition for the site. I was looking at your LinkedIn. It looks like you have a long background in journalism, including most notably you were at Vice for several years. Talk a little bit about what your role was there.
Yeah. I was at Vice for 9 years, which is a long time in in media terms. I started my first probably 4 years there. We're at Motherboard, the tech website there, and that was the first time that Vice spun off a subject-specific vertical. And it was just a really, really special place to work. It's a really, really cool website with just unbelievably talented journalists who have all gone on to do great things. And it's something I hold really dear in my heart. I had an opportunity in 2016, 2017 to kind of lead Vice's international expansion from editorial side. So I worked for a couple years setting up new territories and working with existing ones. At our peak, we were in 34 countries around the world, if I remember that correctly, which is a lot. And so yeah, it was a really, really cool and interesting experience, right? Like we launched Vice India, Vice in the UAE, Indonesia, all over South America, Latin America. Like there was already a strong European component. So just learning about, journalism tradition and expectations and culture around the world was really, really, really rewarding for me. And at the end, I was in running North America for a while. So US, Canada, Mexico, which bled into our larger LATAM operation and so on, which is really cool as well. So just across the board, like seeing a company like that grow so much over time. You learn a lot from it. There's good, there's bad, but it was a really nice time to really support what I think was a really solid approach to journalism that was outside of kind of the normal boundaries of what you would expect from traditional print journalism, for example.
I don't think I knew this, that Vice had country specific. I guess for bureaus would be wrong word. Verticals even, was it where they were local teams where they were creating the content for local audiences? Was that kind of the setup?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I think my pithy little phrase at the time, which you have to have, was like, we should be local everywhere. And I think it resonated. The idea was you would, rather than trying to export American journalism to other countries, which has a mixed track record in the history of journalism, is really about how do we take kind of our ethos and the vision we have, and then build a staff locally that knows what's important from a journalism perspective, what's important and influential from a cultural perspective, and like really build a unit. So it could be, 4 or 5 people we had in Romania for a while. They were extremely talented. It could be, huge operations somewhere else. But this idea that when we have really talented journalists in space to like do what they want to do, that they can see like that white space for them in their country or their territory. There's so much opportunity for just really great storytelling. And then the grander play was, if we're producing really great storytelling around the world, how do we either, share that across different territories? How do you translate it? Like, it's just kind of building this global coverage model that was very, very fun.
Yeah. And so you, at one point, your title was like editor in chief of all of Vice, right?
Yeah, for I think for North America at the time, yeah, we had kind of separate different operations.
Yeah. And like there were all these different kinds of parts of Vice. There was like the TV
Mhm.
thing. There was like, it had its own like creative marketing agency at one point, its own studio. Like, so you were like editor in chief of like Vice.com. Was that it? Yeah.
Yes.
And then it also had its own separate print magazine, which also had its own editor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you left in 2020?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that before the bankruptcy?
It was before. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you set off to do when you left? Like, I know you like started your own production company and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, my real love for my own personal self, beyond just, I got a lot of thoughts on journalism and so on, but really personally, I really care about science storytelling in a lot of ways. And so I had the opportunity to, a project I had pitched to Netflix in 2019, got picked up and optioned, and so. COVID hit, media market was changing pretty dramatically. It was unclear what the future was. And I honestly was tired of being in New York because all my family's in California. So I decided to make an exit and say, like, I'm happy to move on from this. I've done 9 years here, and there's going to be 2 years of major changes and major challenges we have. And like, I've done that too many times. So it was a good opportunity to take this other project, which turned into a series called Encounters, uh, take that and then started a production company focused mostly on science and tech storytelling. So did that for 3 years. That was very fun. Had some good successes there, and then documentary industry, hit a lot of pain in 2023, 2024, and that's where I ended up, and I had a baby at the time, so it was a good chance to think about doing something different for a bit.
So when you were doing the production thing, that's like just like you not like front loading the production of documentaries, like you actually going in and pitching to major streamers saying, I want to make this documentary or this docu-series or some or whatever, and then they fund you, and then you make it, that kind of setup, like almost like a traditional Hollywood
Yeah,
production studio.
yeah. It was a lot more on my focus would be on development, and then trying to sell a series or a film. And then I'm not a great director, and there are a lot of really great directors out there. So the idea would be try to partner with really great talent and storytelling to produce some of these projects.
Yeah. Would you describe yourself as like, I mean, out of all your core strengths, as like being kind of like a video first type of journalist?
Actually, not. No, I really enjoy it, and I wish I got better at it. There's an enormous number of very talented people in that space. I mean, my whole background has always been in print or text, and that's definitely my first love, and probably my strength is just really as an editor. There's so many great reporters out there. There's so many great storytellers out there that I've always just tried to make sure that they're supported and bringing their vision to life.
Yeah, and but the reason I asked is because like I was like looking through Straight Arrow News, and I saw there definitely is like a very strong video component to what
Yeah.
you do, and I'm looking forward to jumping into that. But getting into Straight Arrow News, so like, let's just like, can you just like give us the kind of 30,000 foot view of its like founding and history? I know it was started by Joe Ricketts, who coincidentally I met when he was running DNA Info. I was like brought in to
Hmm.
like do like a session with its journalist about like writing headlines and stuff like that. So like what was the premise? How was it founded? That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So the story is that that Joe and then a good friend of his, Jonathan Harding, who's our managing director now, and had co-founded it. Joe's definitely conservative. Jonathan's definitely more liberal, and I guess they were chatting one night, or had a conversation, and they were like, we talk about so many issues that we may or may not agree on, but they had this realization that what they were reading was so much different, right? Like what they see and the picture of the world they see is so much different. And it really became a conversation around the wider media landscape. And so, of course, there's professional news media, but then when you look at social media, when you look at commentary, when you look at, podcasts and everything else, like there's so much bifurcation in our media market overall. And there's good and bad things about that. I certainly don't knock it. But they saw this idea that if we do unbiased storytelling, that's just the facts, like can we get to the heart of issues that people disagree on? We think there's an opportunity there where people really want, in such a noisy media environment, like where's that like bedrock of facts that we could start with and then go figure out, read the opinion writer that I really, really trust, or read the analysis that I really trust. Like whatever you feel from there is great, but can we start conversations that are divisive with just focusing on the factual nature of what we may or may not agree on? And so from that conversation, they both thought or I know Joe for sure was looking at this as there's a really good opportunity here. There's a big white space here. We think this could be a big business and then or a successful business, and we think this also could be something to really be proud of. So that origin story really sold me on this place when I first started chatting about coming here.
Yeah, it strikes me as that it's like kind of the original thesis of the messenger, but the problem with the
Hmm.
messenger is it just launched with such a high burn rate and no with no like I think it burned through like $50 million in like 6 months or something like that. Where like what was the kind of original like newsroom of this? So, like because like I was looking at the site, it has like a pretty widespread news coverage in terms of like different things that it covers from politics to tech to energy and stuff like that. But it's a
Hmm.
relatively small team. Like it's only like 70 people. So like what was kind of the initial iteration of the site? Like was it doing a lot of original reporting? Was it doing more kind of like gathering all the different news sources and then writing an article that was
Hmm.
trying to be, down the middle as possible? Like what did that look like? Like I know you weren't there at the time, but to the best of your knowledge, what
Yeah.
was it like in the early days?
Thank you for that. It is to the best of my knowledge. I think it's fluctuated a little bit from what I know over the years. Like I think it started very explainer heavy, which I think is a really strong approach. And then, but it's hard to get attention on that because so many of the traditional distribution systems are really really set up to try to like to encourage you to be more biased in your approach, right? Like I'm very hesitant to use the word clickbait because I hate it, but everything social platforms, whether it's SEO, whether it's looking at any distribution you can, like figuring out how to say the thing that is on a lot of people's minds is more effective than just giving the information itself. And so I think that's a struggle to start with. There's been periods here where it was really high output, kind of high churn, like let's do lots of short news. In the past, it's also been doing news stories in text, video, and audio, which is really cool from like kind of a reader viewer choice perspective, but it takes a lot of resourcing. And then a lot of the through line through it has been how do we talk about like let's cover the stories of the day, but do it in our way. The challenge with that is, we have really succeeded when we have really strong word of mouth. Like people who find us really like what we're doing. Like loyalty rates are really good, so on and so forth. But it's really hard to make an impact when you're just doing the same news as everyone else, but doing it like as quietly as possible, essentially. And so the balance we've been trying to find is like how do we increase the depth of our storytelling, do more original storytelling, and really try to like talk about the issues that people care about, but do it continuing to do so in an unbiased way.
So like, but And I get that it's probably evolved over time, but like, how much is the model based on we're gonna like report original news? Our reporters are gonna pick up the phone and call someone, or they're gonna go and meet someone, or attend like some kind of live event, or like basically report original information versus like, let's see if we can take the information that's kind of out there and try to package it in a specific way.
Yeah, yeah, I think the latter was definitely the main focus when I came in, and I think that's just challenging because you know, a big part of the news is also not just contributing to noise on the news. So if a thing happens, politician says something, and 1,000 different news outlets write about it, I actually think that's a net negative because you're just creating so much noise on one thing that could have been spent elsewhere. And so for us, as we've shifted, is it's much more very much focused on actually doing the reporting, picking up the phone, getting good sourcing, talking to not only experts and influential people, but talk to regular people. Like the only way to really understand a lot of these like very challenging conversations in the country or things that people disagree on a lot is to hear from a lot of people. And that's really like it's definitely had a big impact on our overall success, and it's something that we see our readership really caring about a lot more is like they want to hear more voices from people, which means we have to pick up the phone.
So when did you join the company?
In March of last year.
March of last year. So your title is Chief Content Officer, but I didn't see anyone on the masthead with like Editor in Chief. So I'm guessing that's kind of like a modern version of the Editor in Chief.
Yeah, yeah, it's a title they hired before. I'm not a big fan of the word content, but there it is. But yeah, I'm the chief editor.
So what's the kind of pre Derek version of it and the post Derek? Like what thesis did you come in with in terms of like things that you? I mean, I guess I'd love to just hear how did you get the job in the first place, but then also what did you see your role coming into it in terms of like ways that you could transform the company in terms of like the content it was producing and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, the thing that really attracted me about this place was having such a clear mission. And then as I spoke to, staffers around the organization, it's like the culture here is incredible. People really care about our mission, right? And that's something that stands out to me. Anytime any news organization of any size is really, really working well, is when you see that everyone is bought into that. So that's what drew me here, and that's really what the success of this place has been. Is we have really talented people who are committed to this, and saying that we're unbiased is like anyone could put a label on that. I mean, you look at taglines across media outlets across the industry. There's always someone who's going to say that. Some are better than others. But it takes a real commitment every day from the craft perspective. It's not just a label of just saying, let's make sure that we have a left opinion and a right opinion on every single thing we do. It's a across the craft of journalism, how are we trying to make sure that not only we're demonstrably unbiased, but that we are thinking about every bit of the presentation we do. So seeing that from a team that's really talented is what drew me here. I think where the opportunity was having conviction that in investing in doing real, original, serious reporting, and also having fun as well, hitting that balance, is the opportunity to grow. I think there was a reflex here before of if we just produce more stories, we'll get more page views, that'll increase ad rates, so on and so forth. And we all know that's a pretty dated approach. The economics aren't there. And so for us, it's just really about how do we, across what is a huge remit, like how can you cover the world in an unbiased way? You need, tens of thousands of people to do that. How can we take really talented journalists we have here and wrap that together into what is a compelling and interesting website to read every day?
So the pre-Derek version of Straight Arrow News was very high volume curation, aggregation, pulling news from already existing sources, and then the post-Derek version is kind of doubling down and investing more in original journalism.
Yes, yeah, I think that's exactly it. And again, I mean, there's really talented people working here, and I think it's just an opportunity to say, if we really land the balance on let's do really strong original reporting, let's focus on the passions that each individual person has. Let's trust that we can sew that together into something that makes sense every day. And we're seeing that more and more, and it's been really heartening to like create like a publication with an identity.
And so, from practical terms, did that mean you were taking the already existing staff and just giving them a new remit, or were you significantly expanding the newsroom or the production team or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's been a bit of both. You know, my whole philosophy always is like I want to anywhere I work, I want people to feel like they can do the best work of their career so far. And so a lot of that is developing staff, giving people opportunities for new experiences, for learning new skills. I mean, one of the things that I feel really lucky about in my time at Vice is I at some point wore basically every hat that you can do in this industry, and like that level of experience makes is better for people's careers, but also I think it makes just a whole organization feel like it can do everything. It's a lot of that, and then yeah, we've been able to hire a lot of really great reporters in the last few months and throughout last year. We've had some really great editors come in, so it's really just been kind of continuing to build on where we want to go.
So let's talk. Well, I'm trying to think where I want to take this conversation first because I have kind of
I'll
there
go
are kind of
anywhere.
two avenues I want to explore. I guess the first one I want to explore is so there's this kind of theory in media that you either want to be, extremely niche, or if you're going to go broad, you have to do one of two things. One, you can't really go like broad with deep reporting because the New York Times and a few other ones just have too much of a head start, and you can't compete. Or you do like kind of like the strategy before you, where it's just like high aggregation, utilizing arbitrage of programmatic advertising, and then if you can eke out enough page views, then you can do a slight
Hmm.
profit margin. What like given that you are a relatively small news organization that is covering kind of a broad uh, focus of news, how do you, and I know obviously the whole like straight down the middle thing is, but I think if you talk to someone at the New York Times or Washington Post, they're also trying really hard to like be as unbiased as possible.
I agree.
I don't know if I've always been a little bit skeptical that like there's a lane there that hasn't been completely mined. Like, where do you think, how do you think you can compete?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of answers to that question, and I really like it. First, to think about the times, like one of the things I would not want to come across, and saying we're unbiased is has a lot of connotations to it. Part of it is just the fact that bias is very individual, and so how can you anticipate what everyone is going to think about that? That's an almost impossible challenge, which is the kind of challenge I like. It's attractive to me. It's kind of psychedelic. But you look at major media, the professional news media. I think they do a really good job, right? I think there's not enough credit given to how good the media is, and then very functionally, when they get it wrong, every other journalist is excited to call them out on it. So it's also a very like self-policing industry, which to me increases trust. And then if you look at the great reporting that's been done in this country, a lot of it comes from partisan media, and that's totally great. Like if a publication that's clearly on the right or the left is doing great reporting, there's no problem with that. I think that's spectacular. I think also generally they're very honest and transparent about their point of views. So what's wrong with that? That's what makes our journalism industry, especially in this country, so good. I was going to say thriving, which is probably not the right word to use, but it's very talented and very good output. So when you look at that, yes, of course, the question is where is there a lane in there? Because you don't want to just say we're going to be, we're going to be the AP, but with a tenth of the staff. Like we don't want to just be bland. And so where we've seen opportunity is one. I think the really like one of the biggest challenges in media is that I think that there isn't a great like relationship or value exchange between the publication and the readership. Some places do it great. I think, and you see all the indie news startups that have come up in the last few years, or subject-specific websites and so on. They're all really thriving at connecting with their audience. But like this is like a service job. This is a public service, right? Like everyone in my family is a firefighter or a teacher, and like I was like I chose this to do my public service. Like we have to be there for readers. And when you look at some of the institutions there, they only view themselves as institutions, which means that they have a gaze in whatever tower they're in, looking down on the rest of the country and trying to be objective. For us, I think being unbiased is much more around how do we connect with people who are either fatigued by the news or feel like they're left behind by the news, and how can we talk about issues that they care about in ways that either are illustrative, so that could be, really personal storytelling that's highlight one city in the country. How does that affect all of us? The other side is looking much more at kind of trend analysis on how are conversations evolving, who's manipulating those conversations, and like essentially how is our information and understanding of an issue being shaped by the wider forces of, I don't know, conversation and information today. I mean, it could be social media, it could be politicians, it could be whatever else you want to pick. I think we have such a complex information environment, and where we see opportunities to try to make that something that is accessible and easily understood and feels impactful for a person that maybe isn't a media junkie.
So, like from a practical perspective, though, like where does your edge come in? Like, how do you communicate with those people? Like, how do you reach
Yeah.
those people that in a way that like maybe a larger publication or a traditional institution can't?
Yeah, I think it's about being opportunistic, right? Like most of my career has worked with teams that punch above their weight, and I really like that because, as soon as you have a few hundred people or 1,000 people in a newsroom, you feel that pressure to cover everything and to be the paper of record for everything. For us, we're very distributed around the country. Like we're a remote first kind of workplace. And so wherever we have people, we're trying to balance, like be the bridge between local and national. So we take kind of a regional view on the country. And then whether it's people in Houston, we've got a few folks there. We've got some folks in Atlanta. We've got people all over the Midwest, and then folks on both coasts. It's like how do we take those issues that feel like don't necessarily hit the national stage or haven't yet, and start to raise that conversation around how does something happening in California or in Alabama start to influence conversation elsewhere in the country. And so there's that. And then I think also just the high standard that we have for being unbiased in the news has been attractive to a lot of our readers in the sense that we don't do opinion. We spend an enormous amount of time thinking through everything from how we phrase headlines to how we're writing stories to what our sourcing is to what our coverage mix is, and that seems to really resonate with an audience once they find us.
Yeah. And I think operational efficiency in and of itself and just understanding distribution and having a good ear for news can be, an edge in and of itself, even if you technically don't have the resources. Like that's the whole story of the creator economy is that like, these like people with no resources whatsoever are able to run laps around like traditional legacy news outlets. It's just because they have an eye for what entertains people or what's not being covered and stuff like that. So to be clear, like I think some people focus too much on differentiation of like this is a saturated market, but like I think even the most saturated media markets, there's always room for new disruptors to kind of come in.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I've heard so many like really great pitches in a PowerPoint over the years of like, here's how we present our, here's how we're tackling this white space or this open area, or here's our pitch. And it really comes down to the storytelling, right? Like all people care about is the stories you publish. They don't care about your brand message so much. And so when you see really, really talented individuals, or you see really great, some of these smaller newsrooms that have popped up that are independent, they know what their niche is because it's what they cover and it's what they obsess over. And to me, I'd rather have, 10 really good journalists that are really great to work with, that they really care about something, they really have a passion, and then figure out how to make a publication out of it, rather than say, I need four politics reporters, I need three people on business, I need blah, 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 just create a checklist and fill them. I think that's a much less organic way of building a newsroom, and it doesn't resonate with audiences much because it feels forced or overstructured.
So when you're like, so obviously this is like your role as editor in chief slash chief content officer. Like when reporters are pitching stories, like is it like, are you like having to constantly kind of orient the pitch or direct them to like what's our original take
Mhm.
on this, or what how are we covering this story differently? Because like I've worked at news organizations that did rewrites of stories. they,
Mhm.
they did not report any new information. They were 3 hours late to every story, and then they were just hoping that, like, this is back when the Google and Facebook were just giving free traffic away. So if you just published enough stories, and eventually one of them would like go viral and then pay for all the other stories you published that day. But obviously that era is kind of ending right now. So like, how do you, in terms of like, given your limited resources, how are you thinking about each story that's being pitched to you in terms of finding like what the original take is or whatever?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's something that I try to look at organizationally. So we have incredible editors here who I really, really trust, and we've got, let's see, six main editors, and then each one of them have a team underneath them of 3 to 5, maybe 7 people on one one side. So each one of those teams, to me, it's less about I'm not taking every pitch; they're taking them for the most part. It's really about how do we look at each individual person and how do I get them to feel like they're succeeding and doing what feels exciting to them, what feels great about their career, like that they're proud of. So part of that is top down, like setting direction on this is what we will want to see. This is the kind of reporting we were looking for. Like here's a reporting project we should do, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the bottoms up approach is much more important. From here's someone's strengths, here's what they really love to do. How do we make that as impactful and and solid as we can, and consistent? How do we make sure that we're seeing their byline enough to really build a following around the work that they're doing? I think that's the constant tension. I mean, when you talk about churn based stuff, I mean, when I first moved to New York and wanted a job when I was very young, I mean, I was getting paid like $15 to $30 a blog post to write as many things as I could. I covered a lot of tech, and so it was like, if I can write 6 DVD player reviews based on press releases that are 200 words each, like that's what they want, and great, I'm just paying my bills somehow. That felt like such a bad time in media because it's really creating editorial strategy around the incentives that are there, which is if we get more traffic, we make more money, and that's great. I think where so much of media is going is around building loyalty, right? Like, how do we get someone who's willing to commit to us regularly? How do we get them to potentially subscribe what we do, and so forth? And to that, it's really like they have to care about the reporter. They have to care about a story that we consistently cover. And so for me, I think it's a lot more about kind of the coaching encouragement of how do we support every individual person's like goals and dreams, and then when we see that come forth, how do we build upon it? How do we take that momentum and create a publication that feels like it's really thriving every day? So yeah, it's really much more about setting a direction and helping each individual person getting there, because the caliber of folks we have here have been really impressive to me.
How do you think about like reporters like personal brands? Because like obviously there are a lot of news organizations that are leaning into that a little bit more. Kind of like the Maggie Habermans. Like if you can kind of nurture these star reporters, and they can have like that'll give them outside
Mhm.
size like value to the media company.
Yeah, I think I've got a few thoughts on that, and the maybe the spicier one is I think the idea of news organizations saying that reporters need to create personal brands feels like they're offloading a lot of work to reporters themselves, in the sense that sure, if you have a collection of superstars, the huge followings, you're probably going to have a successful publication. But what are you doing to create that into something that feels unified and is bigger than the sum of its parts? On the flip side, this is something we encourage often, and it's something that's really critical. Like if you're not building an audience that cares about your work, not only are you losing the opportunity to have that audience, but I think there's a bigger miss in journalism where if you're not bringing your storytelling to where people are, if you don't meet readers or viewers or whatever where they are, you're leaving a vacuum that is filled by lower quality news and takes. I mean, if you look at TikTok, which I probably first had on my phone when it was still a karaoke app or sing along app. Like seeing how that's evolved and seeing how news organizations missed that moment let a lot of people fill that void. And there are a lot of great independent, news influencers, I guess, for lack of a better word, on TikTok. And there are a lot of really bad ones. And you can just like Google, defamation TikTok, and there's like 1,000 of them out there. So not filling that void feels like an abdication of the responsibility of journalism, but it's got to be authentic. It's got to be true. And in our case, it can't just be a matter of just tweeting constantly to try to get as much reaction as you can. It really has to be, is there conversation and community built into this?
So, I want to talk about videos separately, but for the written content on the website, how do you think about distribution? And like, obviously, there's so much of this shift towards like owned audiences versus, the rented audiences that are
Yeah.
coming in by side doors and stuff like that. In what ways are you prioritizing getting a larger owned audience?
Yeah. One of the things that brought me here is we have a really good product team, really great app. And a lot of our focus last year was on how do we market the app, how do we drive audience to the app, and we've seen consistent growth month over month on that audience, and they're very loyal. Last time I checked, it was like 20 or 30 minutes a month they spend with us on average, which is a lot for a news app. Like really, really happy to see that. And that's kind of that really good end of the funnel kind of approach, which is like if we can get an audience there, they tend to stick with us. And that's way better than what I've seen from a lot of digital only kind of publishers. You just don't ever have any direct connection with your audience. On the web, of course, like we're small, mid-sized publisher. Volatility has been a lot higher, especially for smaller publishers with Google. I mean, every 3 months things change, and I think that the smaller you are, the more you're impacted. So we see some of that, but across everything, it's really trying to build more community. So we've actually seen great success on the social side. We have a really great social team, and then we have newsletters are working well for us. I think video has been really strong. We have a daily newscast in the morning hosted by just great anchor Craig Negrelli, and it's very much a riff on kind of local broadcast news. But every morning we got 8 to 10 minutes of all the headlines of the day. It's a really good show produced by a good team, and the following on that is strong. I think that's probably our strongest kind of driver of loyalty. So when we see that on YouTube, people are following that regularly. When we see it on our site, we're following it regularly. So a lot of what we're trying to do is I think, be consistent in what you cover. So rather than just give me 5 headlines today because those are the biggest stories of the day, like how are we taking 2 or 3 stories and consistently hitting that storyline? Because people don't need to think of us as like the everything app or whatever. I don't think any publisher is that. There's maybe like 6 of them. But for us, it's like when we can really get into a story we care about, we think we can own that story. We're there before other people. Let's continue going after that. And then you're building readership, the trust that you're not going to just capture their attention once and then never see them again. And then the second part is throughout all of our programming, like how are we giving people the right touch points? I mean, this is what every media company says, and it works. It's like how are we making sure that we're going to where our audiences are, serve them valuable information there, and then also try to push them back into our overall kind of ecosystem or whatever. Ecosystem is a terrible word, but bring them into our network.
So, how do you get people onto the app? Is that just a pop up whenever it detects like a mobile user is browsing one of your articles, trying to just kind of push them into the app, or is there some other way that you can market it?
Yeah, we've actually done a lot of things. I think, yeah, trying to capture, what did you call it? Rental traffic? I really liked that.
Yeah, I forget what now I'm forgetting which. It wasn't rental traffic. It was owned versus, yeah, maybe it was rented traffic. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before. I really liked it. But I mean, you get a hit on Google Discover. Those people are very much, they're not even window shoppers. They're kind of drive-by folks. And if we can capture some of that, great. Like we're always optimizing the website to try to push people to the app. But we've seen a lot more, or I wouldn't say a lot more. We've seen other success in more conversation starting approaches. So one of the bigger drivers for us for awareness and for app is we've done some really good influencer partnerships. We are the fact checking. We do fact checking for Jubilee during their debates, and like it's been very surprising how many people are like, "Oh, I knew about Straight Arrow because of Jubilee," and like that's a great positioning for us because they do debates that are really cool. It's very interesting to see so much opinion at once. That's something that we theoretically could do if Jubilee didn't exist, but it's not necessarily a space we'd play in. But being there as a fact-checking partner has been really cool. It helps to kind of like advance our mission, and we've seen a lot of payoff from that.
And for
I think we
context,
see,
Jubilee's this
yeah.
company that where
Oh
it'll
yeah.
put like one conservative in the middle or one liberal in front of the middle of a room and have them surrounded by like 30 conservatives, and then he'll that person will debate them one by one. Like it has all these kind of contrived scenarios of debate where it's taking people of opposing viewpoints and throwing them together, and you kind of get to see the drama of it all, but then supposedly maybe learn something out of it. So you have someone who's like fact checking these people after the fact or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So after they record, they will put up points of probably the more contentious points that people may or may not argue about. It's less about the kind of school marmy fact checking and more it's like here's something that's like really, really a big point of argument for them. And then yeah, we would kind of do like a fact checking overlay.
It's
So that's
like
been
a
cool.
VH1 pop up video kind of thing.
A little bit, yeah, yeah. I think it's really cool. I mean, what they do is I don't know. It's pretty wild. It's a really great idea. And I think it's always helpful for people to see other people's opinions because it helps you kind of gauge yours. And so yeah, interesting dynamic. But that's always worked for us. And then we see a lot of from a pure marketing perspective, social still works really really well. And that's a good opportunity where we can kind of share what we're doing, show off what we have, and the same old playbook.
And is it just like on your Twitter account or whatever? By the way, if you could download our app, like just having a generic call to action, being like, by the way, if you want this news, like every single day or whatever, download our app type of thing, like kind of old school, just awareness, or and with the influencers, is it are you paying them to like? By the way, I got this news from the Straight Arrow News app. You can download it and use my discount code. That kind of standard type of thing.
Yeah, so we do a bit of that on the, I would say, pure kind of paid marketing side. Some of the other ones are more organic. But yeah, I think it's really about trying to bring, it's more mission forward. So it's like if you care about this, if you think a better relationship between the media and readers is possible, then like join us. And I think that mission oriented approach is not only true to us, which thank God I would not want to work somewhere where we're faking it, but it's also really it's something that we attract the right people in, or the people who we know are going to be with us. So there's a kind of like pray and spray approach for some of that stuff that a lot of media companies do, and for us, our priority is can we build an audience that really cares about what we're doing, and then we can build this thing with them versus just how can we get the line as high as possible, and then when that happens inevitably you get kind of stuck on it because the churn is so high, the amount of money you're spending to sustain those numbers is so high that it ends up being kind of I wouldn't even say golden handcuffs, but handcuffs of some sort.
So then the benefit of getting them to do the mobile app is A, you can send them post notifications, and then B, do they have to create an account where they hand over their email address or anything like that?
They don't. We are moving into a registration offering and then a premium content offering at some point. So we'll have mechanics for that, some sort of metered paywall. But the main thing is that we just want people to, when they come to the app, the experience is really good. I don't work on the product team, so I'm happy to say this. It's a really great experience. It works really well. And so there's that. I think push alerts are really successful for us, which is kind of surprising to me because I turn off all notifications on my phone. That people really actually are happy with them. We experiment periodically with changing the frequency, and when we decrease push alerts, we often have people who email us or write us or whatever else to say like, what's going on here? Where are all the stories? So that's been successful, but I think it's really just about having a good experience that can sustain, a consistent and regular viewership or readership.
So let's talk about the video. So like I was looking at your at the video, and you kind of mentioned this already. Like on your YouTube channel, you have this extremely buttoned up, old school, almost like could be like you said a local news anchor, and it looks like a traditional studio type of setting. Maybe it's just a green screen, but like looks like something you could like turn on the TV and see. And then, but like I was looking at like your TikTok channel, and that's more of like like more of what we traditionally think of as like a news influencer, like a dude just sitting in his apartment, kind of like summarizing the news and graphics, or like anybody who's seen like a news influencer on TikTok or Instagram type of thing. So it's like it's interesting that you have like this buttoned up version of video, and then this like more kind of short form video native type of format. So like, what's your thinking on like the role of video as a distribution? Like, is it basically taking the stuff that you're already creating on the web and kind of repurposing it and creating a video version of it, or like the video teams operating separately? How do you think about all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, excuse me. It's a little bit of both. It's definitely. I think the guiding light for us always is how do we tell a story that is going to meet someone's expectations for what they're looking for. And so our morning newscast, unbiased updates is awesome. I really enjoy it. It's a little bit like there's a subversive nature a bit to having kind of such a buttoned up show that comes out every morning, especially on YouTube, just because you are used to having a lot of talking heads on there. That's out of our headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska. It is a real studio with a real team, and they're all doing producing that every morning, super early in the morning. And so the thinking behind that was when people start their day, they want to just know what it is that they need to know about, and there's very little time to do it. So unbiased updates is 8 minutes rather than 30 minutes or an hour or whatever that broadcast would do or cable would do. Because I want someone to be able to sit down and have it with their coffee. I want to be able to. A lot of people actually listen to it over audio, which is another thing that wouldn't have necessarily expected, but perfect when you're driving to work. Put it on, hear Craig and we have really great team just putting out like here's the stories that are going to prepare you for what you need to know today. So that's like a very, very classic kind of like open the newspaper in the morning. Like I want to know what's going on today, so I feel like I'm informed. I mean, you talk about TikTok, right? Like we want to A, be able to bring our personality out. B, we have, reporters who are really good at that or really care about that or really understand what is native to that form. And so, yes, like we want to be able to represent what you would expect on TikTok, but it's something that is like true to us, right? Like I just want people to be able to talk about their stories or talk about the work we're doing so that we can add valuable information to a world that is full of all kinds of different information, to maybe say it politely. So it's really about like how are we thinking about either an audience need or a viewing habit, even just hour by hour throughout the day, and how are we programming that? And then on the creative side, it's it's a little bit of both. We largely focus on thinking, let's start with one story. How do we express it in multiple different forms so we can just increase the reach of that story? How can we bring that to audiences so we're not asking them? The worst thing to do would be to say, you're on TikTok, please come over somewhere else and then we'll give you the information. Like, let's give it to you there. And then if you start to trust us, there's other avenues as your either consumption habits or your desires or your life changes. There's other ways to get straight arrow, right? And that's a it's certainly not a playbook we've invented, or it's been around for a while. But I think it really works when it's you're just really true to yourself. And then so in terms of how we would assign that and so on and so forth, it's really about what people are good at, what they really are interested in, and then I just care about giving people opportunities to explore that and see see what works for them.
So like yeah, so like the YouTube is like more kind of straightforward. Here are the headlines and some basic facts
Hmm.
under each headline. This will get you just informed about what's in the day.
Hmm.
Whereas the short form is like more kind of like that kind of explainer format that we're getting kind of used to. That was kind of pioneered by like Vox and probably Vice
Hmm.
to a certain extent. Of
Yep.
like the Strait of Hormuz is closed. This is why it's so hard to hard to open, or like that kind of thing, right? Like where it's like single topic, and I'm gonna like make you stop for this few seconds and talk about this news issue that you've probably heard in passing a lot, and be like, okay, here's the brass tacks of why, explaining this kind of complicated situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's balancing, lean back viewing, which is definitely YouTube, like you're sitting there expecting something polished and want to be entertained, versus social, especially TikTok, is very, very discursive, where anything you're putting out needs to be starting a conversation that either people can remix or add on to, or just even in the comments or whatever else. But people are expecting it to be more conversational. So in my mind, as long as we're being authentic to ourselves and all of those things, like what we're doing is just trying to meet that audience in a place that they already are, and make sure that they're feeling well informed.
And is that like just telling, like, or working with, like, say your energy reporter and being like, okay, you wrote this article about this. Like, do you, like, you said that you have like a dispersed team, like having them set up a tripod in their apartment or whatever and write a script and do something, or is there a dedicated like short form vertical video hosts that are like recurrent faces, or
Yeah.
like how do you integrate what you're doing in the like the traditional newsroom with what you're doing on the video side?
Yeah, yeah. So we do have, a discrete social team. They're producing a lot of that video. A lot of it is stuff that they report on their own, which is very cool. Like one of the things I hated the least 10 years ago is anyone thinking that people on social teams aren't journalists. So we had people going out and doing reporting. They're doing their things. They're remixing stuff that we published elsewhere, like the full gamut. On the other side, for a beat reporter like Keaton Peters, our energy reporter, well, very functionally, we send everyone a full production kit, video, microphone, lights, whatever they need. And then depending on, what they're into, what their is like, what their strength is, encouraging everyone to say, how do we speak about these issues to our readers? And then some folks really like it, really take it up. Other folks are doing other things, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's, podcast, other types of video. Like it's really about finding the strength of every person and then making sure we're presenting that to an audience where they are. So yeah, so it's a bit of both. But one of the things we really care about is like, I mean, if you're a generalist website, which in many ways we are, you have to find a lens for what it is that you do, how you decide that we cover this story and not that. But then for an individual person, we also want to be able to build up some sort of following behind them so that they have community that they're speaking to because they're a subject matter expert. And like if we can land that, which we are currently, and it's working more and more, I think that what you're able to do is like create a publication that people can trust, but they understand why they're coming there, which is for this person's work or for this topic that we're covering really, really well. Like you have to hit both in my mind, rather than just assuming that you're an institution that people are going to come to just because you exist.
So like that hypothetical like energy report or whatever, if they like write, they're doing all their duties of their job, they're writing the articles and stuff like that, but then they want to like turn on their phone camera and just kind of speak on the topic in their beat and upload it to their own personal account. Like how comfortable would you be with that?
Yeah, comfortable. I mean, that's something we encourage, and we get a lot of support from our social team on that. So there's definitely tie-in for like here's form and style, and here's graphics that we want to use. Like there's definitely support there. But yeah,
But if they
definitely
just want to do it on their personal account though,
yeah,
like yeah. Okay,
yeah,
they'll
yeah,
even support
absolutely.
that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think creating a brand account for an individual person is like it just doesn't make sense to me. I know there are people in media in the past who have thought, well, we're supporting this account, so we should own it. That that's so silly to me. It's who's very short-sighted because like we should build up someone who's authentically their own account. They're putting a lot of work to grow it, so like why should we take that from them? And then also like people don't want to follow just like a secondary branded account. It does mean that, of course, like we have a really high bar for how we portray ourselves publicly. So I wouldn't want someone to be, very, very opinionated in their social accounts, and then also we're putting in, the straight arrow in there. And so that's something where every person we've hired has been really committed to our mission, and so it's something they are naturally already doing. And like, a lot of folks are really close friends of mine or people I know are really talented are extremely voicey on social, and that works really, really well. And they should be. They're authorities in their spaces. But I think that it can be really challenging to try to balance that from a publication goals perspective and an individual goals perspective. And here, it's a lot easier just because we're so mission oriented.
So I know you mainly work on the content side, but like to the best of your knowledge, what is the business opportunity here? Like I know it's mainly right now advertising supported. I looked at the site; it's like very clean website. Like I'm one of those people who's like my pet peeve is like when a article page becomes like almost unreadable. But like what kind of ads are appearing? Are they made? It looked like it was like there's like embedded video like videos that your team is creating that are at the top of articles, and then there's like a programmatic like pre-roll ad that runs before that. Obviously with YouTube there's platform sharing revenue. I know TikTok and Instagram don't really share much revenues. Like what are the various opportunities there?
Yeah, I think we do advertising now. It's probably the lightest weight deployment of it that we could do. There's just like not a lot of money in ads anymore. I mean, you would probably know better than me, but last time I saw it was, Google and Meta and maybe Amazon to a degree was like still like over 90% of the ad market on the internet, like are all ad revenue on the internet. Like I feel like it's a losing model. Economics aren't there. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, totally could work. But also it's a bad incentive structure for everyone because as soon as you're purely ad supported, your product isn't your storytelling, it's the audience you can capture. And so, that's it's a really frustrating relationship, and I think that's where so much media burnout has come from. Is not from the actual stories being bad, but from the experience being something where you can tell that there's just a shitty incentive structure. So our focus, as a relatively young company, has been really figuring out what is going to be the driver of loyalty for ourselves. How do we get a growing audience that sticks with us and really cares about what we do? So we're seeing that where the opportunity for us is going to be in subscription or premium offering. We think that if we have a really loyal audience that really cares about what we do, they'll be willing to pay for it. And then the second part is we think that there's just a better opportunity for us in the long run to at least try to own the relationship with our readership, be accountable to our readership rather than being accountable to, a generalized ad market and page views. So that's what we're looking at now. We have a good runway, and we're main focus at the moment is like how do we find the right form for us to continue to grow that loyal audience, which we're seeing this year in particular. And then as we go forward, what can we offer to people that would inspire them to pay, and what is truly useful for them? I think for us, a lot of that is in actually being a home for discussion. Very broadly, not the two major trends in this country are that people are, or at least related to this conversation, but the two major trends are people don't trust the news and people feel really lonely. So if we can create news that people can trust, but then also create community around that, whether it's for discussion, for better understanding, for having a more service-oriented journalism in the sense of people have questions, we'll provide answers. Like all of that feels like a really big opportunity for us. And since we don't have the baggage of being an institution or having a reputation out there in the popular world, and since we don't have a baggage of having been a successful ad business in the past and now trying to navigate a very complex web environment, we do think that there's an advantage just in the clarity of what we can put out.
In terms of the like subscription opportunity, is it like a matter of just introducing some kind of metered paywall and then slowly just converting people that way, or do you think you're going to be launching like separate editorial products that somehow
Mhm.
go deeper on a specific subject or something like that that then people would pay for? So everything you're doing now stays the same, and then you're just adding on something new to entice people to pay. Like which of those two routes you
Yeah.
see you're going to go?
I,
So go.
I mean, my favorite answer to everything is both, and it's definitely true on this one. We do think a metered paywall is critical for conversion, but it's kind of lame to say we're just doing what we did today and now tomorrow we're going to charge money for it. I think that's ultimately what the situation would always be for a media company. But yeah, we would be adding more premium content offerings. So subject-specific newsletters, such as the Energy Reporter Keaton, for example. We've been piloting or testing a weekly version of Unbiased Updates that's much more audience focused, much more conversational. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do kind of reporting projects where if we're going to really, really invest in something, I wouldn't want to like crowdfund that or something, but if subscribers are paying for something, we want to give them something they wouldn't get otherwise. And at the same time, we want to be able to make ourselves as accessible as possible because we do think that there's a lot of value in what we're putting out there. So the fine details of that are something we're still working out, but generally it's like how do we bring people in our world more, offer them things that they really care about? How do we build that connection and give them things we wouldn't necessarily put out on a day-to-day basis because we know it's for subscribers who care about that? And on the flip side, what is the right, what's the right level of restriction or pain to put in to get someone to understand who we are, they care about what we're doing, but at some point we want to inspire them to subscribe because that means more independence for us. That means better reporting for them, and it means that we can avoid some of the ills of purely ad-supported media.
So when you look forward to like 3 years from now, what do you want to be doing then that you're not doing now? Like, would you rather have like a larger newsroom where you're just covering a larger spread of news, or would you rather want to like invest resources into going deeper, like doing long form magazine style reporting or long form documentaries or something like that? Like, which route would you
Yeah.
rather go?
Again, I like both. It's I think there my It's a really good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is I want to hit like what is the size we need to be to create the depth of reporting that we aspire to. And so I spoke before about how I think there's an opportunity at kind of like a regional view of this country between hyper local and national. And so if we want to do that, how many people do we need around the country to understand something happening in this city is now going to be a national conversation in 3 months? Like there's some measure of spread and depth that you need to have. And as we grow, that's something we're always thinking about. So not only are we trying to hire for, the topics we care about and the topics that kind of fit in gaps elsewhere that we have, but also where in the country are these people? What kind of thing, what kind of local sourcing that they have, and how can we start to surface, trends in this country before they become a national conversation? Because I think that's something that national media often struggles with, just because even though they have some of these places have enormous resources, enormous number of journalists, they still end up over-indexing on kind of whatever the big news of the day is. So there's that, but I don't think that our trajectory is to try to compete directly with the AP or the New York Times. Like, I mean, they each have more than 1,000 journalists, or Reuters or Bloomberg. Like, they're doing really, really big institutional work. And I think for us, the human side of it is much more important, and so that's where I think expansion into documentary, I think I really care about. We're doing good documentary and explainer video now, but it's something that we could do a lot more of, or we could go at a higher level, whether that's broadcasts or streamers or so on. I think audio is a huge opportunity. And then I think just much more on the community side. Like I think, I don't know that it's an events business, but I think how can we take what we're doing and also invest in having better conversations around this country as a goal that we have. The form of that is something we're still working out, I'll be totally honest. But I think that there's just an opportunity to know that we're covering enough every day to feel like we're hitting our goals, and then how do we expand beyond that into something that is much more targeted and much more like focused and service oriented to a reader.
All right, Derek, those were all the questions I had
Cool.
for you. Where can people find you online?
At Straight Arrow, it's san.com.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Simon.